so I'm just gonna go ahead and get straight to the point here. Chained Echoes is incredible for a game made almost entirely by one person. Its turn-based combat is very well made and has a lot of thought behind it. The main cast is really strong, and its writing and story is really good. Honestly, I don't really have anything more to say here for the beginning of this video. The game is great, and I gotta talk about why, cause Chained Echoes frankly deserves the praise and attention. So Chained Echoes might have one of the best sets of opening hours I've seen in an RPG. It starts out with two of our 6 main characters, Glenn and Kylian, on a mission to destroy something called an Opus Stone with the mercenary group they work for. Once it breaks, though, it triggers a nuclear bomb-sized explosion that forces the 3 warring kingdoms of Volandis into a peace treaty 1 year later, since no one wants to take the blame for what happened. The next roughly hour and a half is you, the player, then getting acquainted with all of the other main characters, Lene, Rob, Victor, and Sienna. And with the exception of Rob, I was in love with all of these guys by the 3-hour mark. Their individual paths all meet up in Farnspath's castle when a funky-looking demon attacks for mysterious reasons, and a rogue group murders government officials from a neighboring kingdom during the castle's attack to spark a new war. Admittedly, I am skimming over a lot of details, so this chapter of the video doesn't drag on, but Chained Echoes' first couple of hours sets up a lot of intrigue and mystery for the story, and its main cast all make a great first impression, except for Rob. Don't get me wrong, I really liked him by the end of the game, but if I'm gonna be blunt here, at the start he doesn't exactly give the player the greatest first impression of him. The same can't be said for Chained Echoes' combat though, because that made a great first impression and it was pretty much fantastic from start to end. The combat in Chained Echoes is a pretty different beast compared to your normal turn-based RPG. For starters, unlike most other RPGs, you don't really level up in this game. Instead, after you beat major bosses or you complete certain tasks, you get grimoire shards that you can use to learn a new skill for combat, a new passive ability, or get bonus stat boosts. And every couple of points you spend, you get a few set stat buffs, so don't feel like you need to prioritize this third column. Your action and passive skills can also be leveled up by accumulating their own experience points during fights, but if you want to level them up faster, each character accumulates their own SP to use so you can give any one skill an instant level if you have the points for it. I really like how this system is handled. I never felt underpowered at all, and I like that the game gives you a lot of choices for how to slowly build your characters over the course of the game thanks to the many skills and abilities you can pick. Combat itself is also just as well made for me thanks to both its aforementioned progression system and its unique overdrive gauge. When fighting enemies, almost everything you do, including being hit by enemies, will affect the overdrive gauge up at the top, with the one exception being the use of items. When the bar is on yellow, nothing really changes, but when it hits green, the TP costs for all of your stats is cut in half and you even take less damage. When it's on red though, your TP costs will go back to normal and you'll take double damage from enemies. This system helps discourage the player from using the same attacks over and over again, and promotes a little bit of strategy with even the simplest of encounters. Aiding in this is how you can lower the overdrive gauge. Defending can reduce it a bit, but for more effective methods you have two. First off, once you hit overdrive, an icon representing one of the game's skill types will appear next to the gauge. Use one and a chunk will be taken out of it. However, using one too early in the gauge's progression can take you out of overdrive altogether. The second method is using a party member's Ultra move. These are special skills a character can use when the party's Ultra gauge is filled, and honestly these are super useful, with the one I used easily the most being Glenn's. You see, his Ultra move, Power Armor Salvo, hits every enemy present, and also inflicts debuffs that lower both of their attack and defense stats, which is fantastic for groups and bosses alike. Honestly, Chained Echoes' combat is built in such a way that it makes everyone useful and no one playstyle is bad. If you're like me and you like just hitting really hard, you can do that. Want to focus on status effects? Game's got you there too. While some characters are more useful than others, like Victor with his many buffs, I wouldn't say any one character is truly bad at all. Something else I really like is that the party fully heals in between fights, meaning you can use as many skills as you want for any number of strategies and you don't have to worry about not having enough health or TP for the next encounter. Chained Echoes does have another combat style though with its sky armors. You get these about halfway through the game, and they play fairly differently from ground combat. Here, the overdrive gauge is changed, and instead you just have the yellow bar with two red ends. The Sky Armor's main gimmick is that they have 3 separate gears. In Gear 0, you take half damage, but you also deal half damage and you're incapable of using skills. Gear 1 is perfectly neutral, and Gear 2 allows you to deal insane levels of damage, but you take more damage and your skills cost more TP. You may be questioning why you would ever want to go into Gear Second if you take more damage and it costs more resources, and the answer is because with Sky Armors, Gear 1 and 2 both slowly travel to different ends of the overdrive gauge. If you get too close to the right side of the gauge, you'll need to shift gears to second to get it back down, and the opposite is true if you get too close to the left side. Combat in the Sky Armors requires you to balance and pay attention to what gears you're using in a way I really enjoy, and they all have a decent amount of customization thanks to the fact that any frame can use any kind of weapon, and what skills you can use are tied to them. For one final note here, I have to give praise to the game's difficulty balancing. It kept a very consistent level of challenge throughout the whole adventure. It never felt too hard, but never felt too easy. Every encounter felt totally winnable, and if I ever died, all I had to do was rethink my strategy a bit and I was good to go. If you aren't big on the challenge though, don't worry because the game has you covered. In the options menu, you have the option to adjust how high an enemy's stats are or even the size of the overdrive gauge, so you can make your experience as easy or as hard as you want it to be, a feature that I very much appreciate. Along with its incredibly well-made combat, Chained Echoes also has plenty of other side content to do and things to find on your adventure. For starters, you can find a couple of things to power up your party members like the 12 class emblems and the many crystals dotting the world. The class emblems are pieces of equipment that can give stat buffs and 2 extra skills for anyone who has one equipped, and when you max out those skills on that character, they get to keep them, even when they don't have the emblem equipped. To get them, you have to find each area's Hero of Leonar statue, pray to it with a bottle of sacred water, and then complete the hero's trial, which always consists of a battle with that area's enemies. I gotta say though, while most of them aren't too bad to find, Fjord Woodland statue took me forever to locate since it's hidden in the camp area, and you can only get access to it through the secret passage in the trees. As for the crystals though, these are a bit more complicated. Dotted around the world are red crystals that contain a random set of smaller crystals that you can combine to upgrade your equipment. These can buff your stats, add new properties to your equipment, or even give you extra passive abilities. To equip them, however, you need to make sure that specific piece of equipment has enough slots in it. To do that, you can upgrade any piece of equipment twice with the various crafting materials you can get from enemies and treasure chests, and if you handle it right, you can get any piece of equipment multiple different crystals. I like this system a lot, not only because it gives the player a lot more choice for how they build any one character, but also because it reminds me a good bit of Xenoblade 1's gem crafting, but more fine-tuned, and as a big fan of that game, I can really appreciate that. Also similar to Xenoblade, Chained Echoes has 14 unique monsters scattered around the world, with each major area having 2. Unlike Xenoblade though, only one unique monster in the entire game is always physically present in their respective part of the map. The rest you'll have to trigger either through RNG or by meeting a specific prerequisite. There are 2 reasons you'd want to hunt these guys down. Firstly, when you've unlocked the Adventurers Guild, you can claim a bounty for them, which includes money and even items. The second reason is because of the game's reward box. The reward box is a list of 120 challenges that give you things like money, SP, and even other items and materials. Once you've gotten a big enough chain of completed challenges though, you can even collect special rewards like grimoire shards and sacred water. I always love when RPGs have mechanics like this. It's rare I ever complete them, but there's a fun satisfaction in slowly filling out big checklists like this and getting some small rewards for it over the course of an adventure. After a certain point in the story when the party gets their clan, you also get access to some extra side stuff you can do, like recruiting certain NPCs to join your ranks, and side quests for some optional party members and even grimoire shards. Recruiting NPCs is kind of fun and it can give you some nice bonuses like more crystal drops, but beyond that there's not much more to say about it. The side quests though, now that's a bit of a different story. As a whole, the side quests are all really great and have some really nice world building and stories, like in the quests The Gates of Nysa and A Goblin's Dilemma. And on a similar note, it's time to get into Chained Echoes' story, because there are a couple of things I really want to talk about, so if you want to avoid spoilers, skip to the timestamp here. Otherwise, let's get into this. So while there's a lot to love about the game's story, there are 2 points specifically that I want to talk about: Frederick's plan and Kylie becoming the successor to Gwen instead of Glenn. First off, I'm not totally sure how to feel about the former. Like, I can understand wanting to make sure peace truly lasted in Valanda since all 3 kingdoms were at war with each other for over 150 years, but killing thousands of innocents and oppressing everyone, including your own people, just so that everyone will collectively unite under their hatred of you seems like a very bad way to go about this. I suppose I can't argue with the results, but I can't deny I was kinda weirded out after he explained what his goal the entire time was. As for Kylian though, I have no problems with this entire section of the story. I had been wondering the whole game what Gwen's whole end goal was with Glenn, since I couldn't really get a full read on the guy. So it surprised me when it was revealed that not only is he older than the Vayne, but that he's the 8th true king and selected Glenn for his successor in helping make the world a better place after the Vayne are killed. This is where Kylian comes into the picture, since after beating him and the Vayne, he willingly gives back the half of Gwen's power he stole so Glenn can take his place as successor, but he instead lets Kylian have the rest of it. You see, Glenn might have had more potential than Kylian did, but trying to find a way to kill the Harbinger and helping fix the world isn't a responsibility he ever wanted. He spent multiple lifetimes trying to fix one awful mistake he made. He's tired and he wants to finally move on. For Kylian though, this is all he's ever desired. Sure, he may have made some bad choices, and his mindset for how to make the kind of world he wanted was greatly flawed, but at his core, all Kylian ever wanted was to make a better world for everyone and his sister after her very unfortunate incident. He made mistakes. Both he and Glenn definitely know that, so the fact that Glenn gave it over to him shows me that despite all that happened between them, he knows that his best friend is the right choice to help lead the world, and a second chance is all Kylian really needs. Honestly, this entire ending is absolutely fantastic. It gives everyone in our main cast a perfect ending, and it seems to promise a sequel for some time in the future that I couldn't be more excited for after this wonderful story. So thinking about it, Chainedechoes is a pretty strong contender for my game of the year. I loved its overdrive mechanic and pretty unique form of progression for the party, and I have very similar feelings for its side content. The story and characters are also just as good, and I could really tell Matthias Linda spent a lot of time thinking about the finer details of things and the world for his game. For $25, you're getting a really amazing 30 to 40 hour adventure, all made by one guy who absolutely deserves the support. And with that being said, thank you all for watching, like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a happy holidays and a good new year.